Welcome back to another episode of Inspirational Journeys of the Best Minds. I'm your host, Ria, and today we have a renowned tech leader joining us, a guiding light and a visionary in digital transformation, AI, and sustainability. I'm speaking about Rohit Adlakha, a CXO advisor and board member to numerous organizations like Human Edge Enterprises, School of Inspired Leadership, Vaasara, Data Neuron, and Vector Center. Rohit's career spans over 25 years at Wipro, where he held various leadership roles, including his most recent one as the Chief Digital and Information Officer and the Global Head of Wipro Homes. Rohit's leadership style is rooted in social responsibility, integrity, and empathy. His involvement with the World Economic Forum, Global Future Council highlights his commitment to inclusive and forward-looking responses to AI's most pressing challenges. Please welcome Rohit Adlakha. Welcome to the podcast, Rohit.
Thanks, Ria. It's an absolute pleasure to be chatting with you on this podcast.
So I always start with this question, Rohit, where it kind of takes you back into your childhood. And I'd really like to know, what was it like growing up? Where did you grow up? And how did that kind of nurture your aspirations?
So, my birth and college are from the same city, which is New Delhi in India. And since our father was in the army, we spent in seven different cities, seven different schools uh, across the Indian, countryside. And for me, it was just a plethora of experience. The thrill of meeting new friends every 2 to 3 years, the thrill of changing uniforms, but of course, not so thrilling in terms of packing your bags at the slightest of commands. The shortest stint we had was 8 months in a beautiful city of Bangalore, and but that's how just army life is. But having finished my schooling and college from Delhi finally, I joined a company called Wipro, which you talked about, 1995, and never looked back for 25 and a half years. Moved out in December 2020.
Out of all the different cities you got to stay in India, which was your favorite growing up?
I think each city had its own charm, but the one which left perhaps the most indelible impressions is a city called Sikandrabad, twin city for Hyderabad. Spent 4 years there in high school, and perhaps the best years, the formative years of life were built there. We just had our reunion with the batch of 1989 last November, and it was absolutely fantastic to walk the aisles of the classrooms and visit the school building, which hasn't changed. But I think that 4 year stint was perhaps the turning point or the game changer for me in my life.
And Rohit, how did you decide you wanted to make a career in tech? What was your decision making
Luck by
idea
chance.
behind it?
During our times, of course, if you've done sciences in your senior school, then the options are fairly limited to three, predominantly engineering, medicine, and architecture, in that order of preference. Uh, I did appear for a lot of medical school exams, but somehow that wasn't the best bent of mine, and engineering then became a logical choice. And of course, 4 years of engineering, I was lucky enough to get into a company that is Wipro, and I've really seen the company grow in terms of transformation. So, in some sense, a lot of my tech upbringing, my baseline of knowledge has been rooted in from the company itself. Uh, Handled 16 different roles in the company, seen seven different CEOs,
Wow.
seen the company grow from 100 million to 11.2 billion, 5,000 people to 230,000. So it's been a fantastic journey. And a lot of what I am in terms of AI, digital, cyber risk and security, sustainability, transformation, I owe a lot to the first company that I worked in.
Oh, that's incredible. The entire change that you've got to see in the company.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I still joke around with people. I had more CXO titles than the CEO himself at that time. I was the CDO, Chief Digital Officer, the CIO. That's the second CXO title. And third title was the Chief AI Officer. So a lot of times I used
Wow.
to joke around with the CEO that I have more titles than you, and perhaps I'm your successor. But that's just on a lighthearted note.
And what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced early on, like being at a company like Wipro from day one, and having been there for 25 years? What were your initial
Yeah.
challenges?
So when you're a kid fresh from college with a lot of excitement, with a lot of exuberance, you want to make an impact, and then you hit corporate life, or
Mm,
corporate life hits you, whichever way. It is definitely a big cultural shift. So all of 21, when I joined Wipro, I got the title in the company called MRF, which is the most ragged fresher. I was young. I
okay.
was perhaps a little uptight for the corporate culture, and people saw me a little different. So right from HR to finance to sales to my bosses, everyone ended up ragging me. But when you get a daunting uh, target, and I'll tell you, the first year of my corporate career, I got a target of roughly half a million US dollars, and I ended up doing roughly $1,000 in comparison to that in the first year itself. So it was a massive, massive. I won't call it a disappointment, but a learning. But I never
Mm,
looked back. And the next year itself, that is year two of my career, we together won the largest deal for Wipro ever in its history. And a lot of learnings early in my career itself. So salespeople's jobs are not just to bring in orders, but also to collect money from customers. And I inherited a customer with whom Wipro had done business about 3 to 4 years prior to me joining the company. And the task was to go and collect the money, which was 4 years old, and it was in a government office in India, in a nice city called Ambala.
mm,
So, the financial years, it ends at 31st March. So the target was to collect the money.
yes.
And I lined up there around 29th of March, hoping that, I'll be able to collect the money. And the gentleman who was supposed to sign on the file and release the money was getting retired. And he was very, very apprehensive, saying that if I release the money, the enforcement directorate may actually put a case on me. So he says, "You go, I can't help you." And I was very dejected at that time, all of 21, 22. And there used to be cycle rickshaws. So I was taking a cycle rickshaw to the bus stand where I thought I'll go back to Delhi, which was the base location. And I saw the same gentleman walking
Mhm.
on the road in the evening. And I, without any prejudice, without any expectation, I said, if it's okay, I can drop you to the bus stand, which was a longish walk. And he was an elderly gentleman. He sat on the cycle rickshaw, and I don't know what came over him. And he says, "Tell me what help do you need?" And then I told him that, young, energetic, and I've inherited this, and I need to get the money. And he says, "Okay, come the next day," and he signed on the file. So it's
Wow.
small learnings like this where it's just the human element which sees you through, whether it's your personal or professional career. And I think that's been one of my biggest learnings in my corporate career and personal life.
And having had such a long stint at Wipro for 25 years, from your youth, from as being a fresh grad, to all the different CXO titles that you got to hold, how difficult was the decision to move from Wipro? And is there anything that that leaves a strong mark for the company for you?
uh, I don't know if you believe in divine intervention, but I think that's what happened in my case. After having spent
Mm,
25 and a half years, I felt I'd done almost every role in Wipro, right from leading large P&Ls to startup businesses to strategy and execution to sales to delivery and competence building. And I just felt that since life has come a full circle, maybe I should try something new. At that time, I never knew what my next step is going to be, and I used to be very prescriptive in my life. I used to literally write down what I want from life and be very, very single-minded focus on what the next step in life should be. For the first time, I think in my life, I just took a step of moving out of the company, and a lot of people were shell shocked, including my parents, that how could he have ever taken a step and he hasn't even thought what his next step is. He hasn't even decided where to join next. Normally, people will keep 3, 5, offers up their sleeve.
yeah.
But I just took it, and now when I look back, I think it was very, very enriching. very, very fulfilling. I've stopped uh, stressing on what I need to do in life. I just let it come. And like you say in cricket, if you start doing premeditated shots, you may never know what bouncer life can actually bowl to you. So I let the ball come to me. I judge the pace, I judge the length, I judge the line, and then I decide how to play it. And that's what's helped me in the last 3.5 years in my career tremendously.
And Rohit, we know when it comes to corporate life, you've seen it so different. It must have been very different 25 years ago when you were starting off at Wipro to now what you see the new generation. What's your take on this? What is the biggest change that you've seen in corporate culture?
Actually, one thing which has remained constant is disruption. I keep saying that we are staying in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, taken from the US Army. So, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
technologies have changed. The way people do business has changed. But the fundamentals of disruption, the uncertainty, the human element, in my view, has still been the common link. So, the 1990s, I saw the internet revolution, especially across the globe and in India. The 2000s were about mobile telephony. The 2010s were all about social media, coming through and taking us, in a guided storm. And 2020, of
Yeah.
course, this decade is all about AI and of course Gen AI itself. We did see a lot of downturns. The 2008 financial crisis, the 2000 dot com, burst. But I think the resilience, the adaptability has what has really helped the industry move on. And another big shift that I've seen over the last 3-4 years is moving from dedicated employment to time sharing employment. And I'm a classical example of having worked in one corporate and handled CXO roles. And now I am in some sense a pioneer in what I call CXO as a service, where I'm working with 10 different companies, 10 different domains, 10 different geographies, 10 different leadership styles. And the entire gig economy, which is about 3.8 to $4 trillion, currently, and there are about 435 million people, if I have my numbers correct. So there is a fundamental shift of perhaps few generations back where staying in one company was the norm to perhaps learnability, experience, broad basing, and multiple companies is going to be the future, especially with the advent of work from home and Gen AI helping you in terms of productivity. So that's been another big shift that I've seen in the last few years in my career.
And I do see you speaking a lot on leadership on your profile, with over 10K followers on your profile, you're sharing your leadership nuggets. So, how has leadership evolved for you? What have you taken throughout your journey with different people that have influenced you? And how do you take on leadership?
First of all, I believe that leadership is the confidence, the ability, and the risk taking mechanism of you personally, which can then be demonstrated to others. It's great to read and then preach, but it's more difficult to
Mm.
actually practice and then help people get guided down that path itself. So, experiential leadership is the first lesson that I've learned. Do it yourself before you ask others to embark on your journey. The second is that you need to lay a lot of trust in whatever you do. You may be a leader leading a company, leading a country, leading an entire geography, but ultimately
Mhm.
leadership comes in from trust, from transparency, from communication, and not just the title that you hold. And I learned that very, very early in my career itself. And for me, I used to joke with the people, and now I find it so practical. I used to tell them that my definition of leadership is not the title that I hold, but if I walk in the office campus, and these used to be large campuses housing 25, 30,000 people, if you walk from one end to the other itself, it could take you perhaps 30 minutes. So I said, my benchmark of my leadership is how many people come out of the way when you're walking down the campus and they come and say hi. No expectation, no review, no task to be done, just the quality of saying, I saw you from a distance, I thought I'll say hi. And I used to count, and the record I think was 25 people from one end of the campus to the other whom I approached to say hello, or they came out of the way to come and say hello. So that was, I thought, a great leadership benchmark for people. And the next benchmark I keep is that if people come back and say that we've been greatly influenced by your style of working and we would like you to be our mentor, irrespective of whether they're there in my direct reporting or indirect reporting line or they're just peers, I think that's the second hallmark of leadership that I've learned. So great nuggets, but I think I've just picked it up as we moved along in life.
And what advice would you give to any aspiring professionals or just entering the workforce? What do you have to say to them?
Without getting very religious, I feel there is a book followed by many, many people. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. And it talks about three tenets, which I think is a great book for a guide to life, irrespective of what philosophy you follow, irrespective of what religion you follow. And the Gita talks about three basic principles. And that's what I would like to tell people who are just embarking on their career. The first, of course, is you need to garner knowledge as much as possible. How well you learn, how much you learn, it just depends on you. And the good part about learning is that the more you learn, the more you realize that the less you know. So there is infinite knowledge available. It just depends on your own capability, on how much you can grasp and imbibe. So knowledge maximization is the first suggestion I would make to them, especially where if you're out of this tech field in a month's time, you feel as if you're out of place because there are so many patents, so many new technologies which have got launched, especially in the Gen A area, which is in everyone's radar right now. The second thing I would suggest is that you should always experience what you learn. And on a lighter note, in school, we used to have theory exams and practical exams. And we used to sometimes dread the practical exams because whatever writing and spelling it out on a piece of paper versus doing it in a physics, chemistry, or a biology experiment used to be very, very different. But that's the true test of life. You gain knowledge, you experiment, you find your own version of truth, and then you can go ahead and give that experiential learning to people. So knowledge and practice, or knowledge and experience, are two pillars. The third pillar is what I
Mm.
call connectedness. You know, all of us are connected in some way or the other, animate and inanimate objects. And the faster we realize that, the faster we understand that communication, working together as a team, sharing knowledge, sharing challenges, sharing your so called stress is only going to help you evolve as a better human being and the person on the other side. So, connectedness and looking at all as one is a third suggestion which I'll make. And I'll give you a classical example. When I was a CIO, I was talking to the lady who used to head the service desk for us, which is basically providing customer service to internal employees. And I said, your single mantra should
Mhm.
be that the way you want to be treated by someone when you make a call is the way you should treat someone when someone else makes a call. And that simple rule helped people so much, and our customer satisfaction index went up tremendously. So, knowledge, experiences, sharing, and connectedness are three suggestions that I would make to people who are just embarking on their careers now.
That's wonderful. And my last question, Rohit, I always end on this note, is that if you were to win a lottery and money wasn't a factor, what would you do with your time?
On a side note, I still believe that money is important, but not the most important thing in life. Of course, there are a lot of debates about it. But assuming that, as they say in Hindi films, that seven generations don't need to work, that is the amount of money you have in your bank balance. I would, I think, increase the focus on myself across all the three facets that I talked about. Can I spend more time in knowledge gathering? Because the more I learn, like I said earlier, the more I realize there is so much more to know, and you're just an infinitesimally small grain of sand in this entire universe. So I would like to learn much more. I would like to experience life much more, rather than spending the traditional
Mhm.
8 to 10 hours in a work from home or a face-to-face meeting environment. And using the knowledge and experiences, I would like to share my life with everyone around me. Monetarily giving benefit to people is one aspect, outside of our basic needs and luxuries that we may want to afford at some point of time. Ideally, if you're able to pass on that monetary benefit to people around you. But I still believe more than monetary benefit is the human experience which can change people's lives. So I would like to spend more time with people, learn from them, because I believe that everyone is a guru, everyone is a teacher. You can't have one single teacher in your whole life. So how much you can learn from others and how much you can share your life experiences with them to bring back their inner joy and get back to their true selves. I think that would be my goal.
Amazing. That's extremely wholesome. So on that note, Rohit, I thank you so much for joining our podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you and learning so much about you and your career
Thank you so
journey.
much, Ria. I hope people enjoy our conversation, and happy to have a chat with them even offline to share their experiences and share mine even further. Thank you so much.